Welcome to the Flying with the Flock podcast, best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt. And ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to the NFL playoff. So long, NFL regular season. Hello, NFL Super Wild Card Weekend, in which your Philadelphia Eagles will be playing the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday at 4:30 p.m. But yeah, we'll get into all the playoff seeding and all the playoff games coming up here in a little bit. Before we get started, if y'all could leave a like and subscribe down below, that would be much appreciated. Before I hop into this, we have roughly 5 very important games that I'm going to touch on from this past week. Then we have quite a few head coaching firings that we're going to talk about. And then we're going to get into some of the matchups and seeding of the NFL Super Wildcard Weekend. So, without me blabbering on for too much longer, let's hop right into the first game of this past weekend, which is one of the bigger ones. We had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Carolina Panthers 16-14. The Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, he went 16-22, 203 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception on the day. Rushing-wise, Bucky Irving had 26 carries for 85 yards, and Baker Mayfield himself had 4 carries for 31 yards. Receiving, K. Dotton led the charge here in the receiving room. He had 7 receptions for 94 yards and a touchdown. Mike Evans had 2 receptions for 34 yards, and Rachaad White had 2 receptions for 18 yards. Those were the leading receivers during this game, but quite a few other receivers caught the ball. Defensive-wise, they were able to intercept Bryce Young once, but they weren't able to apply too much pressure to the quarterback. Ultimately, just the weather being and ref ball being a major factor in why the Panthers couldn't move the ball as efficiently as one would have hoped. Moving over to the Panthers, Bryce Young, he went 24-35, 266 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, like we mentioned just a second ago. Rushing-wise, Chuba Hubbard, he was their leading rusher. He had 5 carries for 10 yards. Rico Dowd had 7 carries for 10 yards. So they really couldn't get anything on the ground, mainly relying on Bryce Young's arm. Receiving-wise, Terrell McMillan, the rookie, led the team. He had 4 receptions for 85 yards. Jalen Coker had 6 receptions for 47 yards and 1 touchdown. And Tommy Tremble had 3 receptions for 38 yards and a touchdown. Those being the 3 main receivers that Bryce Young really targeted, a total of 17 times between those top 3. So he really has a lot of trust in the rookie, Terrell McMillan, the veteran, Tommy Tremble, and Jalen Coker, I believe, who's a sophomore this year. But he really relies on those top 3 guys from game to game. Defensive-wise, they were able to intercept Baker once, and they sacked the quarterback twice, ultimately applying a little bit of pressure on Baker. I mean, it being worse conditions, they were just able to keep Baker contained. Every once in a while, he broke out and made like a weird Baker Mayfield play where he just got to the line of scrimmage and then tossed it forward as the defense was crushing down on him. But overall, the Bucs were able to come out with a win in this matchup here. We will talk about who won the division here in a little bit, because this game had a chance to be decided by the Falcons-Saints game, which we will touch on in a little bit. And, yeah, we'll get into that whole entire thing in a couple minutes. But overall, it was a piss-poor outing by both, and ref ball ultimately helped the Buccaneers solidify their win here over their division rival. Speaking of division rivals, we had the Seattle Seahawks march into Santa Clara and beat the San Francisco 49ers 13-3. And honestly, it didn't even feel that close. Sam Darnold, he went 20 of 26, 198 yards, through the air. On the ground, Kenneth Walker had 16 carries for 97 yards. Zach Charbonnet had 17 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown. Receiving-wise, Jackson Smith-Njigba had six receptions for 84 yards. Kenneth Walker had 4 receptions for 36 yards. And Cooper Kupp had 2 receptions for 29 yards on the day. Defensive-wise, they were able to pick off Brock Purdy once, and they were able to sack the quarterback 3 times, ultimately putting Purdy off his game and putting him flat on his back. Moving over to the 49ers, speaking on Purdy again, he went 19 of 27, 127 yards and 1 interception through the air. On the ground, Christian McCaffrey had 8 carries for 23 yards. Brock Purdy had 2 carries for 21 yards. Receiving, Juwan Jennings had 4 receptions for 35 yards. Christian McCaffrey had 6 receptions for 34 yards. And George Kittle, who finally came back for this matchup, had 5 receptions for 29 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack the quarterback twice, and they were not able to force any interceptions by Sam Darnold, which is big to beat to beat the Seahawks. You have to be able to force turnovers by Sam Darnold, which isn't overly hard. We've seen him throw 2 or 3 interceptions in a game in this past season, but he's becoming a little bit more safe and pinpoint with his ball placement over the last couple of weeks. So ultimately, looking at this, I can actually talk about this. So this game was for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. The Seahawks ultimately won, and so they locked up the number 1 overall seed. Every time the Seahawks have done that, they've went on to win the Super Bowl. Fun fact, every time that the Pope changes, this happens too. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Do I entirely trust in the Seahawks team? No. They only put up 13 points against one of the worst defenses in the league right now because of injuries. But it doesn't mean they can't find a way to win, especially with the Seahawks defense. They are almost locked down. And Mike Macdonald is going to have his guys coached up to the level that they need to be for a playoff matchup. That's just how it's going to be. The 49ers, obviously, they are facing the Eagles, like I mentioned earlier this episode. The 49ers, like I just said, have a really banged up defense, and it's especially their linebacker room and a little bit of their defensive line. Their offense is also banged up. They have quite a few pieces that are down with injury, one being Ricky Pearsall, one of their 2 main receivers. So this is going to be an interesting matchup for the 49ers. There is a small chance that they win, but because of their defense, I feel like it is a no-brainer that the 49ers might fall to the Eagles in Philadelphia this upcoming week. Alright, so we're moving on to the next most important game to me, that being Falcons-Saints. Now, I already mentioned that the Buccaneers beat the Panthers. So let's break this down real quick. So since the Buccaneers beat the Panthers, all the Buccaneers needed were the Saints to beat the Falcons to win. If the Falcons won, because they had already swept the Buccaneers during the season, that means based off of... let me take another step back. Because the Falcons swept the Bucs and the Panthers swept the Falcons, that means... and the Panthers and the Buccaneers split the series, that means based off of common teams played and beat, that the Panthers would win the division if the Falcons won. So that's how that worked. I'm just breaking it down just so you understand bit by bit. So make it as simple as I can. Panthers need the Falcons to win. The Buccaneers needed the Saints to win. With me saying that, I'm going to go in and read the stat lines. I want you guys to guess, if you guys don't already know, I want you guys to guess which team won based off of just the stats. And I want to see if I'm doing a good job in teaching how to read some of these stats moving forward. All right, so we're going to start with the Saints here. Tyler Shuck, he went 23 of 35, 259 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception on the day. Rushing wise, Aldrich Estime had 21 carries for 63 yards. Tyler Shuck also had 3 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. Receiving wise, Juwan Johnson was the leader. He had 3 receptions for 61 yards. Dante Pettis had 5 receptions for 60 yards. I thought he retired. And Aldrich Estime had 5 receptions for 43 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to intercept Kirk Cousins once, and they were able to sack him 4 times, applying a lot of pressure on the quarterback, which is surprising with how old this defense is. But they were able to get after the quarterback and put the Falcons' offense behind the sticks. Okay, so that's the Saints team. Moving over to the Falcons. Kirk Cousins went 18 of 32, 180 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception through the air. Rushing wise, Bijan Robinson had 15 carries for 33 yards. Receiving, Drake London had 4 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts had 6 receptions for 58 yards. Darnell Mooney had 3 receptions for 20 yards. And that's really anybody I'll throw in Bijan Robinson as receptions. He got 3 receptions for 10 yards. Defense-wise, they were able to intercept Tyler Shuck once and sack him 4 times. Ultimately, doing a similar thing to what the Saints did to the Falcons, this Falcons defense was able to come to life and put Tyler Shuck behind the sticks, forcing him to play 2nd and long, 3rd and long situations. So, with all that being said, take it in for like 5 seconds here. Okay, who do you think won? Okay, so if you guessed the Atlanta Falcons beating the New Orleans Saints, then you would be correct, meaning that the Panthers won the NFC South and were locked into the 4th seed because all the other teams in the 3rd, 2nd, and obviously 1st seed all had winning records. This is like the 6th or between 6th or 8th time that a team has won their division with a losing record. Last time it happened, it was the NFC South. Before that, it was the NFC East in 2020. So it has become more of a common occurrence. But it doesn't mean that these are bad teams. These are just divisions that just play each other rough. So congratulations to the Panthers for winning their division off of their division rivals beating the shit out of each other. Congratulations. Anyway, moving on to another fairly important game. We have the Washington Commanders beating the Philadelphia Eagles backups 24-17. Josh Johnson went 14 of 22, 131 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception on the day. Rushing wise, they had Chris Rodriguez with 16 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown. Josh Johnson had 9 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown himself. And Ja'Cory Cross-Keep-Merritt had 13 carries for 29 yards. Receiving was a big thing for the Commanders here during this game. Terry McLaurin had 4 receptions for 57 yards. Deebo Samuel had 2 receptions for 20 yards. Chris Rodriguez had 1 reception for 18 yards. And that's really it with some of these top guys. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack Tanner McKee 3 times and force 1 interception by the backup quarterback. And yeah, we'll get into why the Commanders did so good against the Eagles' backups. But Tanner McKee, moving over to the Eagles, he went 21 of 40, 241 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception on the day. Rushing-wise, Tank Bigsby led the charge with 16 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. And receiving Devontae Smith, he got his receptions. He was the leading receiver, although he was only in the first half. He had 3 receptions for 52 yards. He broke 1,000 receiving yards, and I believe he now has the most receiving yards on the team, getting 3 more yards than A.J. Brown did the previous week. So we do have 2 1,000-yard receivers this season, which is fairly impressive with how bad the offense has been. Behind Devontae Smith in the receiving game here, Jahan Dotson, who played the full game, had 3 receptions for 40 yards. Darius Cooper had 3 receptions for 33 yards, and Tank Bigsby had 1 reception for 31 yards. And defensive-wise, they were not able to sack the quarterback once. There was a lot of times where they were right on Josh Johnson, and you thought that, okay, they're going to wrap him up and bring him to the ground. No, that never happened. But they did get enough pressure on him to force an interception, which set the Eagles up in the red zone. I think they probably failed at that red zone trip. But, okay, let me break this down here. Why am I not worried about this win or this loss? Because it's our backups. Our secondary looked like Swiss cheese. That's why Josh Johnson looked like he had a pretty good day through the air. The fact that we would have Tanner McKee throw it 40 times boggles my mind. No quarterback, at least no quarterback of mine, should throw it over 35 at most. Tank Bigsby was so efficient running the ball, averaging almost 5 yards per carry. And so, in the fourth quarter, I ask you, why do we not run the ball a single time? Rather, we pass it every single chance that we get. Tanner McKee was put in a horrible situation by Kevin Patullo. And yes, there are things that need to be fixed up on the defense as well, but the offense, you can't have your backup quarterback throw it 40 times and expect to win. And Tank Bigsby needs to get more carries even when Saquon's playing. That's what I got to say, because he's very explosive. He will get you 3 or 4 yards a carry, if not almost 5. And he can just be a dynamic player when he's in at the running back position. And obviously with that loss, the Eagles got locked into the number 3 overall seed, even though the Lions beat the Bears. I was going to cover that game, but then I thought it doesn't really matter now, especially with the Eagles' loss. So, though the Bears did look pretty bad, we're going to have to see how they rebound against their opponent in the playoffs. But we'll cover that in a second here. We have one more game, one of the bigger games. This was for the division. It was the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Baltimore Ravens 26-24. Aaron Rodgers had moments of vintage Aaron Rodgers. He went 31 of 47, 294 yards, and 1 touchdown on the day. Jaylen Warren had 14 carries for 66 yards. Hell, even Aaron Rodgers had 1 carry for 20 yards, which is more than what Lamar Jackson rushed for in this game. And Kenny Gainwell had 5 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown. Okay, moving over to receivers, here's another common name. Kenny Gainwell was the leading receiver. He had 8 receptions for 64 yards. Followed by Calvin Austin, who had 3 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown, and Pat Freiermuth, who had 3 receptions for 51 yards. Defense-wise, they were able to sack the quarterback 3 times and force an interception by Lamar Jackson, which an interception in these AFC North games means anything, because another possession could mean the difference between winning and losing. So moving over to the losers, we have the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, who had 11. Jesus Christ. He went 11 for 18, 238 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Derrick Henry had 20 carries for 126 yards. Lamar only had 4 carries for 9 yards. Receiving wise, Zay Flowers had himself a game. He had 4 receptions for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Walker had 2 receptions for 46 yards and a touchdown. And Isaiah Likely had 2 receptions for 32 yards. Like I already mentioned, defensive-wise, this Ravens defense was good, just not that great. They had 2 sacks on Aaron, but they were not able to force any turnovers, no forced fumbles, no interceptions, just to get them over top of the Steelers here. And so this game was not that exciting until the fourth quarter, in which both teams decided to stop playing defense and allow guys to be completely open, deep. And so this Steelers team really had a second half surge to come on and win. And obviously Chris Boswell misses the extra point on the Steelers' last touchdown, opens the door for the Ravens to go down, and they get to the 20-yard line, and their kicker misses it wide right. And so that is the story of that. The Steelers kind of escape their division rival who plays them the hardest and get saddled with the 4th seed in the AFC, playing one of the better teams to me in this playoff, which we will get into in a second here. But overall, this Ravens-Steelers game was one of the better games of the year. And I just want you guys to think back, if you're like me and you watch a lot of NFL games, even if it's not your team, like I can remember almost every single time slot this season, I sat back and I watched the game and I thought, wow, this game was better than some of the games last year. Imagine how many times we kind of said that to ourselves over the past week. And so I'm happy to say that this is one of the better NFL seasons overall. Although the Eagles' offense struggled and I didn't like that, overall this gave us some of the more entertaining games from start to finish. Now, some of them were on the some of them were just us dunking on the Ravens, but still, there's a price to pay. And so with the NFL regular season coming to the end, what's known as Black Monday has came and went. Black Monday, just to catch you guys up, is when a lot of NFL coaches, offensive coordinators, and defensive coordinators get fired from their NFL teams. They wait until week 18, they let these guys go, and then they start their search over January, in which we will be following these openings. I will be creating a new segment for this, and we will have a lot of fun with that. But for now, until I come up with a catchy name for it, let's hop right into some of the bigger firings that have happened over the season and just happened either yesterday, being Tuesday, or Monday. I guess Black Monday kind of spread into Tuesday a little bit, but I can't complain. It gives me something to talk about. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the biggest head coaching opening, and that's the Ravens opening. The Ravens fired John Harbaugh after 18 seasons and 1 Super Bowl win. This comes off the heels of one of the worst Ravens seasons as a whole that I've ever seen, especially in the Lamar Jackson era of the Ravens, and one of the worst endings to a season that has been ever recorded. I mean, the Ravens had a chance to win the division a few games earlier. Where is it at? But they lost to the Patriots. So they didn't really put up a fight against the Patriots, so that brought up questions of whether the Ravens could really beat good teams. And then we come to the Steelers end of season game, and Lamar Jackson had a couple chances, and he took them, but that still didn't matter. Ultimately, John Harbaugh has already had 7 offers, or talked to 7 different teams about coming and coaching there. Where is he going to end up? I don't know. I have a couple theories of where he could end up. I feel like the Falcons wouldn't be a horrible spot for Harbaugh, if you want me to be honest. Coming over to the NFC, getting away from his brother a little bit, who's also in the AFC. And I just feel like this would be one of the better suited opportunities for a prestigious head coach like John Harbaugh to come in and really try to turn around this franchise. And we'll get into some of the candidates that I think each team are going to go after. People like Matt Nagy, the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs, who also was the former head coach of the Chicago Bears, is going to be in this cycle. Mike McCarthy, the former head coach of the Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers, is going to be in this cycle. I think Spagnuolo, defensive coordinator of the Chiefs, is going to be in this cycle. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator of the Bills, is going to be in the cycle. Hell, even Kevin Petula has been rumored to be in this head coaching cycle. So we're going to have to wait and see who some of the bigger names. Cliff Kingsbury, who got fired as offensive coordinator of the Commanders, could also be in this cycle. We're going to have to wait and see. But I do feel like Hardball's best fit right now, to me, would be the Falcons' job. And moving over to the New York Giants, we already knew that Brian Daboll was fired. This is a pretty good spot for a head coach looking to build a strong team and develop their own identity rather than kind of have a top-tier player like Lamar already in there. They can build up Jackson Dart and Cam Skattebo while trying to maintain Malik Nabers' health. And also inherit a top-tier defense. So this position would be highly coveted by any head coach. I would like to see who kind of goes after this one. I wouldn't hate if like Spagnuolo got this job. He was a former defensive coordinator of the Giants. He returns as the head coach and just creates a monster out of this defense, but doesn't know how to work offense, so that it just becomes a one-sided, lopsided team. But we're going to find out. Next up, we have the Cleveland Browns, who fired Kevin Stefanski, which was another surprising one, after 6 years, in which he got a Coach of the Year award, and brought Cleveland its first playoff win since 1990, and took Cleveland to the playoffs 3 times in that span, or 2 times. It's either twice or 3 times. The quarterback situation in Cleveland is not 100%, but also the question of whether the franchise is truly rebuilding or just trying to win with the pieces that they have needs to be answered by this next head coach, whoever takes this job. Stefanski, before Harbaugh was fired, was the top guy in this head coaching cycle, and we're going to see whether he waits until next year or whether he comes back this year already. But Kevin Stefanski would be a good head coach for any franchise. It's just more of a wait and see on how he's really, what he wants to do in this head coaching cycle. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who fired Raheem Morris after 2 seasons, in which he went 19-17. Or was it 17-19? Might have been 17-19. Either way, either 19-17 or flip it, 17-19. Over the last 2 seasons, the offense looked horrible under his 2 years as coach, even though they have some really dynamic players. And I feel like if they need to bring in an offensive head coach with a Steve Spagnuolo style of defensive coordinator, or Vic Fangio style defensive coordinator, a guy who knows how to coach up his defense, and then an offensive guru at head coach who knows how to get the most out of Bijan, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, and whoever the hell is that quarterback. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals, who fired Jonathan Gannon after 3 underwhelming seasons at head coach, with his offense never really coming into its own under that time, and Kyler Murray kind of taking a step back, or 2 steps back. This is an absolute wreck in Arizona, with a bad owner, a bad quarterback, and arguably one of the worst offenses in the league. So the question has to be asked, who do the Cardinals bring in? Do you bring in a defensive guy again, or do you bring in an offensive guy, a developmental guy who will take pieces and just bring them up to where they should be? And do you move on from your quarterback? How do you rebuild your offense? There are a lot of questions that need to be answered by the Cardinals this season after firing a head coach. And we're just going to have to wait and see how this new regime kind of takes over and how they start to lean towards in this coaching cycle. And so next up we have the Tennessee Titans. Now this one's not as glamorous after Brian Callahan, got fired for never bringing the Bengals' explosive offense with him to Tennessee after 2 seasons. And so this is not a horrible job, especially with players like Cam Ward being there, but we're just going to have to wait and see how this Titans team moves forward with their head coaching hiring. And we're going to have to see how they start to develop during this offseason. And lastly, we have the Raiders, who fired Pete Carroll after 1 season and going 3-14 on that season. The Raiders have the number 1 overall pick, and after Geno Smith's play this season, the Raiders have to start building their future in draft and young free agents, especially around a young quarterback. Can't have Geno as your starting quarterback this coming season. And after Pete Carroll gets fired, I wouldn't be surprised if Geno's not long for Las Vegas himself anyway. Alright, so let's get into some of these matchups and this playoff brackets and who's my prediction for each game. We're going to start in the AFC. Obviously, Denver got the number 1 overall seed, so they clinched a bye. They will face the lowest seed, who moves on to the next round. So one of the first games we have in the AFC playing, we have Buffalo versus Jacksonville. Jacksonville's really hot. Buffalo's kind of stumbling into this playoff. I would not be surprised if Buffalo finds a way to win and starts to build their run against a hot team like Jacksonville and moves on to play a weaker number 1 overall seed like Denver. But my gut is telling me that this is Jacksonville's time. They're hot, and their quarterback is MVP caliber. He's not going to win the award, but he's definitely going to be one of the top guys in the voting. So I think I'm going to have to go with Jacksonville over Buffalo. I know Buffalo was one of my favorites earlier this season, and I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Allen's his way out of a loss and ultimately upsets the Jaguars. But the Jaguars have just been on an 8-game win streak, have been hot coming into this playoffs, and that's something that you really need moving forward. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Chargers versus the New England Patriots. Obviously, the Patriots are the 2 seed, the Chargers are the 7th seed. A lot of people would say, I'm going to take New England, but give me the Chargers. I don't know why. I just have this weird feeling that this defense is going to step up and shut down Drake May, and the Chargers won't actually charge her in the first round like last year against the Texans. I think Justin Herbert will show up knowing what's needed out of him now, and he will find a way to win his first playoff game or his second. I forget. It might be his second playoff game that he'll win. But still, it's up in Foxborough, so this would be a major upset. Don't get me wrong. But I just have a weird feeling that the Chargers are going to find a way to win and play some stifling defense against the MVP candidate in Drake May. So give me the Chargers upsetting. This is a major upset for me, but give me the Chargers upsetting the Patriots here in the first round. And next up, we have Houston versus Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, Houston has just one of the best defenses that I've ever seen. Pittsburgh, I think it's Aaron Rodgers' time to kind of give it up. As much as I hate to say that, Aaron Rodgers has been one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch since I was a kid. Watching him go out there and do whatever the hell he wants and not really see any consequences for it. But unfortunately, give me Houston in this matchup over Pittsburgh. And it's going to be... Oh, let me give a score. Sorry. I think Jacksonville's going to beat Buffalo. So let me go back real quick. Jacksonville's going to beat Buffalo 26 to 20. LA is going to beat New England 24-17, and Houston is going to beat Pittsburgh, unfortunately, and Aaron Rodgers last game 20-10. All right, so that is the AFC playoff picture. Obviously, in the NFC, we have the Seahawks with the number 1 seed. The first game on the docket to talk about, we have the Panthers versus the Rams. Obviously, in Carolina, since the Panthers are the 4 seed and the Rams are the 5th seed, I would not be shocked if Carolina upsets the Rams once more again this season, and the Panthers find some way to move on to the next round. But give me the Rams in this matchup, moving on, and I think Matthew Stafford will find a way to will the Rams to a win over top of the Panthers, 38-24, ultimately proving that the Panthers still have a long road ahead of them to be an actual playoff contender. And so, give me the Rams to move on to the divisional round over the Panthers, 38-24. This game I've been tossing and turning about, and that's the Green Bay versus Chicago game. I feel like since they're obviously in Chicago, with Chicago being the 2 seed, Green Bay being the 7 seed, I want to lean with Chicago here. Ben Johnson has some experience calling plays in the playoffs, but some part of me wants to say Green Bay is going to upset Chicago in Chicago, but give me the Bears finding a way to win against Green Bay here, and ultimately moving on to the divisional round. And Caleb Williams has himself a day, and Green Bay ultimately flops in the wild card once again this year. Give me the Bears 27 to the Packers 13. The last game that we're going to talk about is Philadelphia versus San Francisco, the game that I've been alluding to all episode, and I've dropped hints on who I think is going to win, and that's the Eagles. The Eagles are the 3 seed, the 49ers are the 6 seed. The 49ers in post-game press conferences after the loss to Seattle seem to want to avoid Philadelphia at all costs. They rather had played a team like the Panthers or Buccaneers and have the Rams face off against the Eagles here in the first round. Well, that did not come to fruition. I believe that the Eagles are going to run the ball finally, and they're going to run all over San Francisco. If they get Jalen Hurts' legs working and they get Saquon's legs running, and throw in Tank Bigsby once Saquon gets tired, that's going to be a good outcome for them. The 49ers defensive line, linebacker room is completely decimated with injury. They only have Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, and Kendrick Bourne, Sky Moore as their receivers. So Brock Purdy is going to have to play lights out against a top-tier defense that is going to come out hungry. They have not played over the past week. They haven't been able to hit a quarterback. So they're going to be coming out looking for blood against Purdy. And I think the Eagles shut down the 49ers and make a statement here in the first round of the playoffs. I think they beat the 49ers 27 to... Actually, no, I think they beat the 49ers 24-3. The offense struggles a little bit early, but then finds a good rhythm and runs the ball right over top of the 49ers and kicks them back to Santa Clara, which we will be visiting them at the end of the playoff picture. So give me the Eagles 24-3 over the 49ers. All right, so that's it for this episode of the podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening. This is where the season starts to get exciting. It's win or go home. All right. I do want to put the stakes on the table here. I believe that the Eagles have a solid chance of at least getting to the NFC Championship round. I think the path is clear. If things shake out the way that I said, then the Eagles will go to play the Bears next round, and I think that they could beat the Bears if their offense comes out a swinging. So, but let's look at the 49ers, who are really banged up right now. Let's take them. Let's take it 1 week at a time, and let's not get too worried, okay? We got this. Just one game at a time. All right, so that's it for this episode. I want to thank you guys. And remember, go Birds.